In this free crash course, you will learn how to use Figma to design a website, turning a rough sketch into a beautiful design for both desktop and mobile devices. No prior knowledge is required for this course, as I'm recording it with beginners in mind, but we are going to cover a lot of ground, including working with text, shapes, images, masking, gradients and effects, auto layout, components and prototyping. You might not even know what some of these things mean. Don't worry, we'll take it step by step. Figma is a fantastic choice of design software because it's the industry standard for digital design. You can get started with a free account, you can use it on Mac or PC, and it's optimized for collaborating with others. Let me be super honest about my goals for this course. I want to get you to the point where you can enjoy designing in Figma and creating any kind of digital graphics, and perhaps even start using it in your job or charging for your services. Then you'll be so excited about the possibilities in web design, ready to take it to the next level and go professional, that you'll join me in Flux Academy for our comprehensive course, Figma for Web Designers 2.0. So let's get started. To follow along, install the fonts linked in the description of this video and then grab the Figma starter file. It's all explained down in the description. When you click the link in the Figma start file or of the Figma start file, it will open in your web browser, and then it'll prompt you to sign in if you're not, or sign up if you haven't. And then once signed in, the file will open in browser or move over to the desktop app if you select that option. Once you have the file open, the first thing you want to do is duplicate this file so you have your own version which you can edit. So we're going to go over to the top left to the name of the file, not right at the top where it's tabbed, but just underneath. The type's a bit larger. You see where I'm hovering here? And I'm going to click here the down arrow next to the name, and we have the option here of duplicate. Click that and it will duplicate this file. This is your own version to edit. We're going to rename this. So again, I'm going to click, but this time on the name itself, and it will all be in blue. And we can just rename this something like Figma tutorial. You can call this whatever you wish. And everything in Figma is saved in the cloud, so it will automatically be saving all the time. Now, if you look in the bottom left, this isn't actually part of Figma. This is my keystrokes that I'm including for you, so you can see exactly what I'm doing on the keyboard. So you can see the last few characters that I typed there. We've got the end of the word tutorial and then the carriage return. Underneath, there are these transport buttons. So if I hold Shift, that will glow, Control, Option, Command. Now, obviously, these are on the Mac. If you're using a PC, absolutely just still follow along. Often the shortcuts are suggested in Figma. For example, at the toolbar at the bottom, if I hover over this rectangle here, it tells me rectangle and the shortcut is R afterwards, which is the same. But if it's different on PC, for example, if we go to the last icon here, which is Actions, it tells you the shortcut is Command K on the Mac, and it will tell you what it is on the PC. My mouse presses will also be shown underneath the word layers here on the far left. If I just click and hold my left mouse button, you can see that circle there that has been created, which is for a mouse press. That should help you follow along. In terms of the rest of the interface, it can be a bit overwhelming when you open a new piece of software, but don't worry about it. Just follow me, follow along, and I'll show you around and pick it up as we go. So you're not just listening to minutes of me explaining everything. Let's get straight into it. We've got some assets here to start with. We have a photograph here of this portable speaker, and then we have various other items here on the right. Now, we might want to see these a little bit closer, so we need to zoom in. There's a few ways we can do that. One that's really useful is if you hold down the character Z, and that will show in the bottom left. I'm not pressing Z there 6 times. That's just how it displays it when I hold it. I've still got Z pressed. You can see I've now got this icon. If you just look right below the speaker, you see it's like a magnifying glass icon. And what I can do is click and hold my left mouse button down, which I'm just going to do on the top left of this sketch here, and then drag out. And whichever area I drag to, which is highlighted in blue, and then let go of my mouse button, it will zoom in at that level. And this now is our wireframe. This is what we are going to be designing. This is a sketch of what we're going to work towards. And using wireframes is a common step in web design. Sometimes they can be pencil sketches like this. Sometimes they're then transferred and digitized or created from a UI kit. We tend to start with some sort of sketch or structure that we know that we're working towards. And we can see now that this zoom level, when I've zoomed in, is 93%, it says on the top right. I can also click on the down arrow here and choose, for example, to zoom to 100%, and it tells me the shortcut for that, which is Command 0 on the Mac. So I can click on that, it just zooms me in a little bit. And I can also just zoom in and out by pressing Command minus to zoom out, or Command plus and zoom in like this. Fantastic. So we have a wireframe, we have some text here. Let's just zoom into that. I'm holding down Z and my left mouse button as I click and drag. And it tells us what we're going to have here in the top navigation. We're going to have some icons with a logo in the middle, some more icons, and then underneath we have this copy here, which means the text of our website. Let's get started straight away. So we're at 100% here. I'm just actually going to zoom out a couple of times, and your zoom level will look slightly different depending on your screen size and resolution. I'm going to move over and make a little bit of space here at the side, and I am going to create a frame. And frames are containers within which our design lives. You can think of it a bit like a picture frame. It's a thing that, clips, sets its bounds. This whole thing we have here, this whole dark gray as it is in this starter file, which you can actually change, by the way, where it says page here, you can actually change this to be any color you want. I don't like that, so I'm going to press Command Z and undo it. You can drag things around on this canvas, but I'm going to create a frame to set the bounds of our website. So to do that, we have the frame tool at the bottom, and this is a toolbar here of commonly used tools. So you can click on this. You'll also use the shortcut F. And then we have all these options. So it actually gives us some preset options for sizes of common phones, common computers. Let's just use the default desktop one here, which is 1440 by 1024. Click on that. And as long as we've got a 1440 wide frame, that's absolutely fine. So this is desktop 1. We can rename this frame. Here on the canvas, we can double click on the name of it. And then we can just maybe, for example, remove this one area. Now we want to bring this image into our frame. So what I'm going to do is actually make a copy of this image. So I'm going to click on the image here on the canvas. You can see now our layers panel has actually been expanded, and this includes everything that's within our file. And this image here, which has the name here of this layer, and there's a little icon to let us know it's an image on the left, and if we hover over it, it tells us it's an image. We can make a copy of this. Now there's a few ways we could do it. The one I'm going to show you first of all is if you hold down Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC, and then click on the image, holding down your left mouse button, and then drag the thing out to the side. And this is common in many, many software programs. And then just let go with your left mouse button. We now have a copy. If I just zoom out a little bit, you can see there's two versions of this. Now, the width of our desktop is 1440. So I'm going to copy that by just clicking into, I've selected the frame, then I clicked on it in the width, and I'm just going to do Command C to copy. You can see that popped up in the bottom on the keystrokes. And then I'm going to click on this new image that I've generated, and I'm going to go into layout. Now, make sure this icon is selected to lock the aspect ratio. So if that's unlocked and they're not connected here, we can click on that to lock them. Okay. Then I'm going to go into width, and I'm going to go Command V, paste, and then press Tab. And it has now scaled my image down to be this width. Fantastic. Now to bring it into my desktop frame, I just click on it, hold the left mouse button down, and drag it in there. And it is now in this frame. Now just let it go kind of anywhere for now. Let's zoom into this frame. Now if we want to do that, we can click on the desktop frame here on the canvas, and then use the shortcut Shift 2. And that will zoom to selection, whatever we had selected. So in this case is our desktop frame. We have our image now. We can select it on the canvas. We can also select it in the layers panel. So if I click on its name in the layers panel here, I now have this image selected. And I want to make sure this is aligned properly, maybe to the top and the left. So we have these position icons here on our right hand panel. If you hover over them, it tells you align left, align horizontal center, align right, align top, etc. So we can click on align left, and we might want to remember that shortcut that's there. It's option A on the Mac. And now that image is aligned perfectly to the left. You can also drag the image, and Figma will give you a little clue to when it's aligned. So if I click on the image on the canvas, holding my mouse button down, as you can see indicated by the press. Now, if I start to try and drag this up, it will actually move off the edge a little bit. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do when it's in position, I'm going to hold down the shift key. And then when I push up, it won't go off to the left. Even you can see my mouse button is moving a little bit left and right. It will keep it going up. Now, when I reach the top, might be difficult to see on my screen, but you should see on yours, a thin red line appears along the top to let me know that is aligned perfectly, and I can let go. If only I could speak perfectly. And that's now aligned to the top of the frame. And we can check that by, if we go over to our position, you can see that the X position is 0, that's horizontal, and the Y position vertical is 0, so that's right at the top. If, for example, I type in a number here like 99 and then press tab, it's going to move that image down by 99 pixels. So I could type in 0 again, and it will get me back up to the top. Fantastic. Let's get this copy into here. There's a couple of fonts that you should have installed. The instructions for this were, in the description of this video. And if you haven't, now would be the time to do it. And you might need to restart Figma, but these are Google fonts, so you'll find them free, and they might already be on there. So they're Instrument Serif and Jost. How do you pronounce that? Shall we go with Jost? And so install those two fonts. They're the ones we're going to be using. Now we have our actual copy here. Let's zoom into this area here where it says Hero Copy. This is what we need to bring into our site. Now there's a few ways that we can do it. What I'm going to do right now is just copy and paste. So I've just double clicked on this line and it's selected all that. It's the same as like any word processing software. So I won't label this. You can also, click and just drag along. You know how to copy and paste text, right? Command C will copy that. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And if I just deselect that text box just by clicking anywhere on the canvas and press Command V, it will actually paste me in a new text box here that I can just click and drag around. You can see that has been created here on the layers panel, this text box here. Now you might be struggling to, see how all these things are organized, our original assets. So we can actually tidy those up. There's a few ways we can do it. One way is we can make a section. If you go down to the frame icon on the toolbar and then click the down arrow next to it for region tools, we can go and select section, and the shortcut is Shift S. And then if we just click somewhere to the top left of our original assets and then drag around and then let go, it's created a section here around all of them. And then we can rename this. We can double click on its name on the canvas or even on the layers panel here. And then we can call this something like provided assets, which by the way is actually the name of our page, but we're just keeping everything on the same page for now. Don't worry about that. And then we can actually collapse this layer by clicking that down arrow on the left. And now, if we look in our layers panel, it's a bit easier to see what's going on because those provided assets have all been collapsed into that slice. And then we have our desktop frame with the image in it and then this text here. So let's zoom in around the area we're working in of our design. I'm going to click on this text and I'm going to click it and drag it and bring it into my frame like this. And I'm going to change the type to the font Jost. So under typography in the right panel, we have Inter, which is the name of the font we're currently using. Inter Regular is the font. We click on that name Inter, and then we can type in Jost. Click on that. And then now we have a font. Now your initial setting should be the same based on Inter. So we'll leave it as this for now, and then we will play with that once we have all of the text in there. So let's get the rest of the text. So I'm going to go back over to my slice. How do I get to my provided assets? Well, I can click on it, remember, in the layers panel and do Shift 2 to zoom to selection. I want to zoom into this copy. I can hold down Z or hold down Z if you're in the United States, and then click and drag around this copy. And we've got this other copy here that says not smart is just better. So I'm going to select that, Command C. Then I want to go back to my desktop frame. So I'm going to click on that and then Shift 2. I'm going to deselect by clicking on the canvas once, then Command V to paste. And it's pasted this text in here. I'm going to drag that up to the top. Now I actually want to separate this out based on our sketch. Do you remember? We can go back to wireframe sketch. I'm clicking on it here in the layers panel of provided assets. I'm going to press Shift 2. And it's got not smarter above the circle, which I guess is the speaker, and then just better underneath. So let's go back to that text here on the desktop. I'm clicking on that layer there on the left layers panel, Shift 2. And what I want to do is duplicate this. So I can do this the same way we did before. Hold down Option, click and drag anywhere, and I've got another version. So in the first one, I'm just going to delete this text. And the second one, I'm just going to delete everything else. So they are now separated. Fantastic. The last bit of text we have, if we go back over to our copy, I'm going to click on it. It starts with the words top nav there, and it's a text frame in provided assets. Shift 2 is for the button, call to action, which is discover the sound. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to go back to my desktop, Shift 2, Command V, and I've got the text now for the button. So now we want to start to lay this thing out. So Command minus to zoom out to 50% or whatever's comfortable for you. I'm going to click on the desktop frame. I want to make this bigger because I'm looking at my wireframe here. If you maybe have both in view, let's actually drag this desktop frame by clicking on the name of it and holding down the left mouse button and dragging it so it's at a similar height to the wireframe so we can look at these next to one another. Then what I'm going to do, whilst hovering over the bottom horizontal edge of this desktop frame, I get this up and down cursor. I'm going to hold down Command and then my left mouse button and click and drag down. So that means I will drag with the top part like being fixed and I'm extending it effectively at the bottom. So I'm going to do this right down to say the bottom of this image, and it wants to snap there. I'm feeling that snap. And then I'm going to let go. It ends up being a height of 1920. Fantastic. So now I can roughly lay this out. So all I need to do is just like using, PowerPoint, anything like that you've used before. I can just click on this text box and hold down my left mouse button and then drag it around. So it's near the bottom. So I'm just going to drag it down to the bottom. Now, if I actually hover, it will actually want to line it up to the other text boxes. You see these red lines, or to the whole canvas. But if we're not sure if that really is the center or if it's one of the other boxes that it's lining me up to, like here, all I can do, remember, I've got my position control. So the icon in the top right, or the shortcut align horizontal centers, and that will bring it dead central. Then I've got the line of text above the buttons. That must be this guy. So I'll just drag this somewhere vaguely. And then this time I'll press Option H to bring it to the center. I've got my just better that goes underneath this speaker. Option H. And then I have got not smarter. That's going above the speaker here. So I'm going to bring that in there. Fantastic. I want to change these two fonts. So not smarter and just better, I want to select both of them. So I can, whilst one is selected, hold down Command and click on the other one, and it will just go to this other one. If you want to select two on the canvas, you have to hold Shift whilst clicking on the other item. But in the layers panel, it works differently. You select one of them, then Command click, and it will select one other. If you hold down Shift, it will do everything in between. Now, at the moment, these are next to each other. So if I just drag not smarter up to the top, I'm holding down my left mouse button and dragging it up in the layers panel. Not smarter selected. If I hold down Shift and click just better, it's selected discover the sound as well, which I don't want. So I've got to click on just better and then Command click on the layers panel. There are different ways you can select multiple things. So with them both selected, I'm going to go over to topography again. These are still inter. So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to change this to instrument serif. Fantastic. That's very, very small. So I'm just going to click on this down arrow and maybe change them to the largest size, which is here, 128 for now. And notice that this Discover the Sound is not using the correct font. So I'm going to click on that on the canvas. I'm going to go to typography, click on the font name, then type in Joost. And we have that in there. Fantastic. Now, how big do I want these fonts to be? Well, I shouldn't judge this at the zoom level that I'm currently at. This is 50%. We need to be working at 100% to judge sizes. So I'm going to use the shortcut, which is Command 0. And look now, I'm at 100%. So I'm just going to now drag around. Now, I may have done this already, but I'm not sure if I actually pointed it out. If I hold down spacebar, see now I get the hand symbol as my cursor. This means that I can click and drag, and this is a move tool. So I'm not actually moving around items on the cat. If I just click and drag here when I've got this pick tool selected, that doesn't work. Or the standard move tool. I have to change to the hand tool here. So I can click H, and that will actually mean that it's permanently got the hand tool, so I don't have to hold down spacebar. But the usual way of doing it is that we have the move tool ready, and it's quicker to just hold down spacebar, which you can see indicated by my keystrokes in the bottom left, and click and drag around until it's in the place where you want it to be. Okay, so we're still at 100% here. Now, these font sizes, first of all, I'm thinking this image might be a bit low down, but we're going to leave that for now. I'm just going to drag this in so I can see everything. Going back to my sketch, maybe just better looks well if it's a bit smaller and the way you read the line. So I want this to be bigger and this to be smaller. So if I scale this up, and I can do this by pressing K, and that brings me to my scale tool, which was actually hidden here as the third move tool. And now you can see in the panel, it's changed these options, and you can select standard multiples for scales like 2x, 10x, back to 1x. You can type numbers in here, press tab there. You can scale it, from the center or from the top right or whatever. I'm just going to bring this into position. Let's click to align it to the horizontal center and just kind of do this by eye. But I want it to emanate from the center. So I'm going to hold down the Option key or Alt on the PC so I can see vaguely the kind of width I want, which is probably similar or a little bit bigger than the actual size of this rounded speaker. When that's vaguely right, I close down the scale tool. We're at 180. We might want to just go up to like 200 or something like that. Let's try that. And I'm going to align it to the center. I need to select this again, sorry. Option H, align to the center. And that looks pretty good to me. You can zoom out a little bit and see what it feels like in the whole composition. You can zoom back in to 100% and see how that's going to feel as quite a large sort of headline. I'm just going to click and drag this up a little bit. Just throw it vaguely in there and we'll sort the position later. So if that's at 200, I maybe want to scale this so it's half that. So I'm going to select this bottom one just better by clicking on it once and just change this to 100 for the point size there. Fantastic. So you should have instrument serif regular 200 and instrument serif regular 100. Let's line it to the center, Option H. Sorry, I need to deselect because it was in that little box here, option. Select my text again. Nothing selected in the right panel, so now I can press Option H and it will align it to the center. And just kind of drag this so it feels like it's in the right place underneath. I'm just holding Shift while I drag up and down. Somewhere around here looks good and we can finesse that later. Fantastic. In our next section of text, I think this type maybe feels a little bit big. So I'm maybe going to just choose my next option down, which is 24. I'm going to, because we've got this sort of horizontal centered layout, I'm going to actually change the way my text box aligns. This is aligned to the left. I'm going to click Align Center on that. that won't align the whole thing. That's just the text within it. And then I'm going to press Option H, but that just means if this text expands now. So if I start typing something, then it's expanding from the center, but we don't want to do that. So that's at 24 regular. I think let's make our button 24 for now as well. And we can play with the button later on. Just align that back to the center with the shortcut. Fantastic. So with our text, we have a few other options that we can do. We can change the color of the text. So if I click on the text, this again, I won't labor it. It's the same as like any word processing software, but where it appears here, we have typography, we have all the options. Then you can see it says fill. And this is the color here. You can see we have a white square. That's called a swatch. That displays the color. And then all these F's next to it, that's called a hex code. And this represents red, green, and blue with a value 2 letters for each. And that's what we use on the web to render colors in a browser. So if I click on this swatch, I can now select, any of these colors here just by clicking and dragging on this spectrum here. I can move the hue along here on the bottom and select, sort of different colors. And this is with a hue, saturation, brightness controls. I can change this so it reads RGB or whatever I want it to be. And next to it, we also have this eyedropper tool. You can click on that. And now if I move over to my canvas, you can see wherever I move, it says click to sample. So I could actually sample a color from in here. And I'm thinking one of these, maybe like really dark greens, would be really nice sort of color to sample. So I'm just going to click on this one. And I've got this sort of off black, kind of dark orange. It's more of an orangey color actually from this point. That's selected more than the olive of the actual speaker. So let's go with that for now. So that's another way we can select colors, by actually sampling them on the canvas. Fantastic. So we want this text to go, I think, behind this speaker. That's going to look a lot more interesting. And there's a few ways we could do that, but we're going to do it by using masks, so I can introduce them to you. So I want to mask this image here, the part of the speaker that's going to overlap with this text. Now, this looks pretty circular to me, which is good because it allows us to demonstrate masks using geometric shapes. Now, let me show you how they work first of all. What I'm going to do is actually just demonstrate this firstly. So if we go over here to the side and we grab this image, I'm going to click on it in the layers panel. I'm just going to make a copy by holding down Option and clicking and dragging out of our frame. So we have this just to work with here. Then we're going to go down to where it says rectangle in our toolbar, but we're going to click on the down arrow next to it for shape tools, and you can select star if you want to follow along, or you can just watch this bit because it's not part of our final design. And if we just click and drag on our canvas, you can see we get a star now. Now with any of the shapes, if you hold down Shift, it will make it a regular shape. So for example, if you're dragging out a rectangle, holding down Shift will make sure that it remains square. Now if I let go of my left mouse button, I have a star. Now to make this a mask, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to the back by pressing the key left square bracket. And you will notice on the layers panel, star 1 is right at the top at the moment. I'm actually going to collapse the layers to make this a bit more obvious, which you can do by pressing Option L. Sorry, not Command L, that's for the file link. Option L. So now we can see the star there. Then if I press left square bracket, you can see in the layers panel it's jumped to the bottom. So what layers are, it's just like something physical. If you've never used design software before, you have, one thing, say you got a blue piece of paper and you layer, another piece of paper, on top of it, just putting things in front, and whatever's, on top is the thing that's visible. So because this star is fully hidden by this image, we can't see it. If we click and drag this star to the side now, you can see that just the parts that are not covered by the image, are now visible. So that's how it works. Let's drag it back underneath. I'm going to select both of them. I'm going to do that by just clicking and dragging out, and I can check in my layers panel that this image and this star are the things that are selected. Then I'm going to use the shortcut to create a mask. You can do it from the top menu, or you can use a shortcut, which on the Mac is Control Command M. And it's created here, we can see a mask group. And we have the image, and then whatever item at the back is the item that creates the mask, or star. If I click on that star, so it's selected here in the layers panel, I can still move this mask around, and wherever it is positioned, then it will mask whatever is above it in the mask group, even more than one item. The cool thing with this is, with this being a geometric shape, we can still edit it. So I can go over to my star here. I can click in this field for the count and then press up arrow on my keyboard and change it to a 6-pointed star, a 7-pointed star, etc. Go up to 20. I can go here into this angle of the ratio and actually change this. Now I'm holding shift while I press down, so I can do it in increments of 10. And I can do it the other way, push up. And you can create this kind of thing, hold shift and push up. Now, this doesn't look very appropriate for our sort of design, but we can do this. We can even scale the thing. So masks are really, really powerful, and that's how they work. So let me just delete that. I've just selected it and then press backspace. We're going to go back over here, and let's try and achieve this, zoom into 100%, just with a circle, so we can demonstrate this. The other way would be do it to just remove the background from the image in a photo editing software or with a plugin. But let's demonstrate mask. So we're going to click O, which is the shortcut for circle. You can see this ellipse tool is selected in the toolbar. And then I'm just going to click anywhere on the canvas and drag out an ellipse, which is vaguely the size I want, but I want to hold shift, so it's a perfect circle. And I started pretty close to that left, but if you didn't, that's okay. Just estimate it. Then with this selected now, I'm going to press the number 5 on my keyboard. And if you look in the appearance panel here on the far right, where it says 100%, that's the opacity. When I press number 5, that changes to 50%. Any of the keys from 1 to 9 will be a shortcut to make that number followed by 0%. So if I press 8, it will be 80%. Back to 5, 50%. Cool shortcut. So now I just want to make sure this is lined up. So I'm just going to do this by eye, clicking and drag this up. Man, this is pretty accurate to begin with. I'm just going to hold down Z and zoom in. I mean, can it be maybe 1 pixel bigger? I'm going to, in my layout panel, lock the aspect ratio. I'm going to push the up arrow once when I've selected in the height field. And I'm just going to manually sort of start pushing this around. I'm now selected on the canvas and I'm using the arrow keys to just push it 1 pixel at a time. For our purposes, this is probably fine, but you can argue it could maybe go another 1, 2. Is this starting getting too big? You can see the white coming off the side. You'll see this better on your version as you just kind of play with it. It's somewhere around here. Now I've got this as 690, which will probably be right for you as well. I'm maybe going to change this position by like half a pixel. So I'm going to go with the X as 366.5. And that looks pretty close, certainly for our purposes. Fantastic. Now if I mask this, it's going to lose what's behind it. So what I need to do first of all in my desktop frame is I'm going to click on this original image and then press Command D to duplicate this image. Then my duplicated one, I am going to click and drag that right up to the top. So that's now covering everything. Click on your ellipse again. I'm going to change in the appearance panel the opacity back to 100% by typing it into that field and pressing Tab. Then my ellipse is selected. I'm going to hold down Shift and click on the image on the top as well. So they're both selected. And then hold down Control, Command and M. Boom. And we now have a mask of this image on the top. We can show and hide this. If you go to the mask group or any layer, you see we get an eye. And wherever there's an eye in Figma, you can click on this and it will change to a closed eye, and that means it's hidden. Show, hide, that's 100% so we can really see what we're doing. So we've now got that masked over the top of our text, which is cool. So now we want to adjust this text where we want it to be. So I'm going to click on the text. I'm going to hold down Shift because it's already aligned to the center. I'm going to click and drag this up and just kind of place it where I want it to be. So it's just a little bit sort of underneath like this. So it looks like it's overlapping. We're getting a sense of depth, but it's still very legible. Okay. This is generally okay. We probably want to mess with the spacing because it feels a bit odd at the moment, but let's do that later on. We're making good progress. I can tell that you're serious about learning Figma, but I want to be sure that you'll have the confidence to tackle any web design project, not just copy me. That's why we created our comprehensive Figma for Web Designers program. So just a reminder to check that out when you're finished with this tutorial, because Flux Academy students become part of our community. Get free updates for life and personalized mentoring. It's a bit like university, but without the fancy buildings. So we've got some type into there. This is looking more similar to our actual sketch, but we don't have this top navigation area. So let's have a look at that now and also learn some more new powerful features in Figma that help us to create layouts. So we have some provided assets. Now I'm just using my scroll wheel on the mouse here to scroll up. Now we have the logo, so I can click on this, and when selected it, we can see it's a vector because we have the vector icon in our layers panel. Remember, if you ever hover over one of these icons, it'll tell you what it is. It's a vector. So now that's selected, I'm going to just press Command C to copy it. Then I'm going to go to my desktop frame by clicking on it in the layers panel, Shift 2 to zoom to selection, then Command V to paste, and it's pasted it into my desktop. Fantastic. So I want this to be at the top in the center, so I can just use my position controls here. I'm using them so to help you go a bit slower rather than trying to use the shortcuts too much. So we align horizontal center, it already is. Then we want to align it to the top. So we click on this one. The shortcut on the Mac is Option W, and that's aligned right at the top now. Now this looks pretty big at the moment. This is 200. Now if we press K to do our scale tool, we'll maybe just try this at like 0.25x, and that's our height of 50. And that feels, if I go back to 100% to look at the size of it, that feels good to me. So make sure your logo has got a height of 50. Fantastic. Now I need some icons here that are drawn out. Now it's telling me that what we need here, if I zoom into the top nav options, is a hamburger menu, a search, an account, locations, basket. How are we going to do that? Well, we could draw them all with shapes with the pen tool, but we're not going to get into that right now. And something really useful that you should know about in Figma is plugins. These are third-party creations that are not part of Figma's native features, but the community have created things to extend it. And if there's ever anything you can't do in Figma, usually a plugin for it. Now we can find that via the Actions menu, which is here. And we're going to look for a particular plugin so we can all use the same icons called feather icons. So I'm going to click Actions and then type feather, and it will come up for you here, matching icons. You can always go over to plugins and widgets to try and find it. And see, it's one I've used before, but it's right there, feather icon. So we click on that. And then in the bottom right, you want to click Run. Then this plugin will open. Now what we can do is we can actually search in here for anything that we want. Oh, we actually wanted a search icon. Well, there's one right there. So we can just click on that, and you can see that it's added that to our canvas straight away. Are some of the others visible that we need? We want a hamburger menu. Well, there's one of those here. These 3 lines is what we call that. On the right, we want an account. Fantastic. We've got a person, user. We want locations. I can't see that, so I'm going to type location. Hit enter. It's going to search. Maybe I wanted more like of a marker of like a geo marker. Place. Map. Here we go. What's it calling this? Map pin. Okay, should have searched for pin. So let's go, and then I want a basket. So let's search for basket. You have to spell it right though. Nothing found. Okay, bag. Ah, beautiful. We'll use this shopping bag. And now I can close this plugin here. Some plugins are free, some are paid with a one-off or sometimes a monthly license, but they can be really useful. So we have all these icons here that are all like on top of each other, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is just collapse all of these. I'm going to use Option L again, the shortcut, just to collapse my layers panel. And I'm going to select all of these icons here, and then I'm just going to cut them so I can paste them where I want them to be. So Command X to cut, click on the desktop frame, Shift 2 to go there, Command V to paste all my icons in here. Now you can lay things out as we've shown by dragging things around. You can also lay things out by using these position controls to, for example, align everything to the left. Now that's just aligning them to the left within the ones that are selected. I'd have to select the desktop frame or one of them to then click on it and align it to the left like that. But I don't want to do that. I want to show you another technique, which is auto layout, which is a really powerful thing about Figma that makes it more suitable for web design, and it separates it from some basic design software that you may have used before. So we need to go back to our notes. So let's go back to provided assets and just click on the text here and Shift 2. On the left, we have the hamburger menu and the search, and then the other three are on the right. So let's remember that, or you can do this next to it if you really struggle to remember two things. Hamburger menu and search. Click back onto desktop, Shift 2. So my menu, icon menu, and my icon search, I want to click and select both of them, holding either Command or Shift while selecting both of them. And they want to be together. So I'm going to put those not into a group, which is what this is at the moment. You see, that's a group. We tend to use, that's this dotted square. We tend to use groups for things like illustrations. But I'm going to put them into a frame. So we created a frame before, but we can also do a frame, make a frame from a selection, and we can use the shortcut Option Command G, and that will make a frame, you see, from this selection. So these can be our sort of left icons, left menu icons maybe. I'm going to copy this text. I've just pressed Command A to select it all, Command C to copy. So they're together now. And then my other three, I'm going to select these three icons here in the layers panel, and then press Option Command and G, and I'm going to double click on the name frame, and I'm going to paste in but I'm going to change left obviously to right menu icons. Fantastic. So now this whole right menu icons, I can actually align this, for example, using my shortcut to the right and then to the top. So they're in the correct sort of place. And my left menu icons, I could do the same thing with them, put them to the left and the top. But obviously we don't want them to look quite like this. Let's click on desktop and zoom to selection, Shift 2, and then Command 0, zoom to 100%, and just look at this top area here. So we can make this a lot easier by using auto layout. And this will arrange things automatically based on the numbers we set versus dragging things around. So if I click, for example, on the right menu icons here, and note what this right panel looks like at the moment for this layout. Everything's on top of each other. I'm going to change this to an auto layout frame. Now there's a few ways that you can do this. You can go over to your layout panel and you can click on this icon here that says use auto layout, and it tells you the shortcut is Shift A. So let's click on that. So this is now laying out these right menu icons automatically. Now the reason it's not spacing them out or anything like that is because if you go over to the panel, you can see that we have this group icon, but the next two have these corner markings around them. And if we click on one of them, This indicates that it is ignoring auto layout. So you can do that with this particular item within your auto layout frame. So what we need to do with that one selected is go over to the top right where it's positioned, and the ignore auto layout icon, which is currently selected in blue, we need to click on that to deselect it. And you can see now this one has moved to the side. Then let's click on the shopping bag one, and then again click on auto layout, and that has again moved to the side. So if we click on the right menu icon's auto layout frame in the layers panel and then look at our settings, it now tells us it's auto layout. The width is set to hug the contents, which means that it will wrap around the contents and hug them at the minimum size that it can possibly be. Okay. The height is also set to hug, so basically that means it's determined by what's inside. Then the direction is set to horizontal. So if we click on vertical, it will actually lay them out vertically, but we want this to be horizontal. And the next one is wrap, which is horizontal, but then wraps onto the next line depending on the width of the box. The next setting here is horizontal gap between objects. So if we increase this, we can push the up arrow. We can start to make this wider and wider like this, okay? I'm going to leave it at 20 for a moment. Then we have the padding around all of them. I'm just going to click and drag to show you what that looks like. You can see the blue square. So back to 0. And the vertical padding works similar. I'm going to show you this more later when we create a button. Okay. So to get these arranged exactly how we want, first of all, I don't like these being black. Now I can click on any individual icon here and change its color, but when I had right menu icon selected, we actually have this helpful thing in Figma, selection colors. So everything within what's selected, it will tell me all the different colors. So for example, if I click on desktop, now we have black, we have white, and we also have that kind of brown that we selected for the text. So it tells me all the different colors there. So if I go back and click on right menu icons again in my layers panel, the only color we have here is black. So if I click on this swatch, and now I can drag this color selector here up to the top left for white. I can also, for the on this page buttons, there was a white there. So we could have clicked on that right there to select a color that we're already using. So now I've got white icons, which I prefer. These icons are too big. So I'm going to select one of them, this icon user. And I think really I want to follow like my 8-pixel grid system, which is a design detail, but I'm going to want this to be in some sort of multiple of 8 and smaller. So I'm maybe going to select all of them actually and change the height of this to 24. And these have scaled down, but if you look, the stroke is still too thick. So you can't use this option, Command Z. You have to make sure you're using the scale tool. So press K. And then now for the height, I'm going to change this to 24. Press Tab. And now you see the stroke is proportional. So if I go back here, although it's still mixed, these look like they were looking beforehand, which is great. Okay. So go back to my right menu icons. I've got a height of 24, so I'm going to change this gap here between the objects to also be 24. And that's automatically spacing these out. If we go over to our left menu icons and press Shift-A to convert it to an auto layout frame, you can see here that what it's done is it's taken these existing settings. So it's saying the gap between them is automatically created, which means they're pushed out to the left and right. I'll show you that again on the next time we use this. But the width is set as fixed as 740. So if we change that to hug, now it's changed the gap to be 658. And we can actually click here by hovering over this pink line in the middle and drag this to be larger or smaller. Or we can type in here 24. So that's the same. Now I know we haven't yet changed these icons. So let's click and select both of them. First of all, with left menu icons, I want to align these horizontally in the center. So I'm actually going to click to align center. It can actually be left or right as well because we're just hugging the width, but let's just make it center. I'm going to select both of them. I'm going to press K. I'm going to change the height to 24. Then I'm going to close the scale tool by clicking on this X. I'm going to click on the stroke. I'm going to change that to white. Fantastic. And now we have, similar sort of icons. Great. Let's check these are all in the correct order. So we go back over to our top nav from our provided assets, click Shift 2, hamburger menu, then search, account locations, basket. Go back to desktop. We don't have that. So with auto layout, all I can do here is I can click menu, and let me just zoom to 100% so it's a bit more visible for you. I click menu on the layers part. I'm just going to drag that to the top, and then now that will appear before it. And on the other one, that's correct, isn't it? User, account location, search, bag, sorry. Account locations, basket, yeah, beautiful. Back to desktop, Shift 2, Command 0. Okay, great. So we don't like the fact that these are touching the edge. That wouldn't look good in the browser window, would it? We need a little bit of space around it. Now you can just click on this frame and just sort of drag it, down to where you think, there's a little bit of space around it. But obviously we want this to be a bit more accurate. So we need some guides in there. So with our desktop frame selected, we're going to go to the bottom right, and there's this option layout grid in the panel. I'm going to click on plus, and it's given us here a grid of 8 pixels. Then you click on the layout grid settings icon on the left. And now we can change this. So if we want a grid with pixels, we can change this to something larger like 120. Hard to see red here, isn't it? So we can change this color to say green. We can change the opacity of this. I'm holding down Shift while pushing up, so it's nice and clear. So we've now got a 120 pixel grid. More commonly with responsive web design and editorial style layouts, we want to use a column grid. So this has created a grid for us with 5 columns. We're just going to use 2 for these purposes, okay? This is the color of our grid and the opacity, and this is now way too much. I'm going to hold down Shift while pressing the down arrow and bring it down to like 30. The type of grid. So this at the moment is set to stretch, which means it's automatically creating the width of them just based on the size of the frame and the gutter, which is the space in between. So again, if I hold down Shift while pressing up, you can see the gutter change, the space in between. Okay, I'm going to set that to 24. The margin is the space on the left and right of the frame. I'm going to set that to 24 as well, and that's what we're going to use. You could also use, a center columns. In that instance, you have to type in the width that you want the columns to be exactly. But we tend to use stretch because it's calculated automatically and it lends itself more to responsive designs. So for now, just make sure your settings are the same as mine. Count 2, the color and the opacity doesn't matter as long as you can see it. The type is stretch, so that means the width is set automatically. The margin 24 and the gutter is 24. Fantastic. So now our left menu icons, we can actually line these up perfectly to this line, and we get this little red mark here to see that it is aligned. Fantastic. And then with our right menu icons, we can just drag these along so that they line up at the edge. We also could have, if I just Command Z undo that, when it's on the right, I can select the X and I can type in -24 because Figma can do math. And it will move it over by that far. And then we might want to change, say, well, the gap at the top, maybe that should be the same. So let's type in 24 for Y. And we'll go back to our left menu icons. That was just dragged around, so that's currently 21. I'm just going to push up till that's 24 and press Shift. And then similarly with our logo, let's just change the Y there to 24. Okay, so these are laid out, but for that to be, work well and be responsive and all the rest of it, I think it would be better to bring all these into an auto layout. So select right menu icons and logo, everything down. So left menu icons is selected as well. And we don't need to make a frame and then make it into auto layout frame. We can automatically just make an auto layout frame by using the shortcut Shift A straight away. And let's call this frame number 1. So let's double click on this in the layers panel and rename this top nav. Press enter. And it's given us these settings. Now it's currently hugging these you know, this certain width and everything, and setting this gap between. And there's a better way that we can do this. Firstly, I'm just looking at this and thinking this margin is too tight. So what if we want to change that? We click on desktop, we click on our layout grid of our columns. I'm going to change this margin from 24 to 64. Okay. So now I want my top nav to fit within this, with this having this 64 margin. So what I can do with this whole top nav selected, I can change this width here. This width should still be on hug, sorry, for a minute. I need to make another frame around it. So I'm going to press Shift A to make another auto layout frame, and I'm going to call this top nav container. And I'm going to change the width of this to 1440, which is, sorry, the same as our desktop width. So you could have copy and pasted it from there. So let's go to top nav container. Now I'm going to align this to the left and to the top. Okay. And then this top nav container, I'm going to make the gap 0. I'm going to make the horizontal padding the same as our margin, which is 64. And I'm going to make the vertical padding 24, which is what we had beforehand, the gap from the top that we were looking at. Okay, maybe that's a bit small. Maybe let's do 32, so it's half our 64 one. Fantastic. Then I'm going to go into top nav, and I'm going to change the width here to fill, which I have done. And you can see the blue rectangle does fill up to that line, but these are spilling out. And the reason is this gap is set by these numbers, and it's too large. So we can bring this gap down. So for example, if we change this gap to 80, it would bring it within. But what we want is obviously them to kind of fill across. So what we should do is change this gap to auto. And what it's going to do there is automatically set a gap so that it's equalized and these all other settings are correct. So this is on fill. Now what I want to do, it just looks a little bit odd. Now I'm just going to turn my grid off with Shift G shortcut. It looks a bit odd, the logo height versus the icons. So I'm going to click on top nav, and then I'm going to make sure these are aligned to the center. Now I can't align things left and right anymore, only top, middle, bottom, because my gap is auto. So just check your settings are the same as mine. The outer top nav container should have a width of 1440 and a height of hug. Doesn't matter about the direction or the alignment. The gap is 0, horizontal padding 64 and the vertical padding 32. The top nav has a width of fill and a height of hug. It's horizontal layout. It's aligned to the center. It's an automatic gap, and the padding is 0, 0. And then just by using auto layout, we have this whole layout created here. Fantastic. I'm happy with that. Right. Finally, let's have a look at some more advanced Figma features by creating a button which not only looks great, but also prototype how it might feel. And then we'll create a mobile layout version of this page to finish things off. So firstly, the button. Let's scroll down to the bottom of our page where we had the text for the button, discover the sound, and click on that. And I want to make this into an auto layout frame. It's going to be an easy way to edit it. So with the text box selected, just press Shift A, and it's created this frame, and we can rename this button. Fantastic. I'm just going to collapse the other layers. Now let's give this button a fill so we can see what we're doing. So with fill on the right panel, there's the icon on the far right, the plus add fill. Click on that. And now it's filled it with white, not so helpful. Click on the swatches option, and we had on this page. So maybe let's select this kind of dark brown that we had, and we'll start there. You can see this is already looking kind of button-like. Auto layout has already added this padding of 8 and 8 around the button. So we can have a look at like what we can do to make this more button-like. We can maybe increase this padding a little bit. Something along these lines. Let's start with that. So we've got 40 for the horizontal and 24 for the vertical. Slide at the center The gap, there's nothing there, so let's just change that to 0 for the minute. Fantastic. Okay, next steps. Maybe because this is a button, we want this text to be stand out a little bit more. So I'm actually going to select the text. I'm going to hold down Command whilst clicking to select just the text. That's the deep select. Hold down Command while clicking on something. And I'm going to change this from regular to a little bit heavier weight. Normally we go up 2 weights, so let's do that semi-bold. Now this item here is the line height, which is space between the lines. If I just hit return just to demonstrate this to you, to make this tutorial a bit more comprehensive, you can click and drag here and see the spaces. Now this is something we'd more do with paragraphs. I'm going to just change this back to 100% just so I'm not confused that there's anything strange going on. And you can also play with the letter spacing, which I'm quite happy with. If we just look at 100%, deep select, but you can push up to make the letters further apart, push down. I'm holding shift and can do it in increments of 10. You make them close together, but let's leave that at 0 for now. Fantastic. So I think to make this button a little bit more interesting, it would be cool to have like some sort of icon next to it again. So let's try in our actions menu again with our feather icons. And I'm thinking a speaker with, you know, sort of the volume lines coming off it, that kind of thing. That's not what I want. Sound, audio. Volume. This is the one. It's called Volume 2. Great. Click on that. Brings it in. I think let's start it with the same as the other icon. So I've got the aspect ratio. I'm going to go to K. Sorry, it is locked. And change the height to 24. And I'm going to go close my scale. I'm going to click on either selection or stroke anywhere. And just change the color here to white. Fantastic. Now I'm going to bring this into my auto layout frame. So I'm going to click on this group. I'm going to drag it within button here. It's gone before. So we need to click on text and drag that above. So it's our top layer. And then we have them next to each other. So now we do need a gap. So I'm going to click on button. I'm going to click on gap here. Press shift and I'm pushing up. Now I've set my nudge amount to 8. Yours might be on 10. You can change that in the settings, but for now we'll just you can just type that in. Somewhere around there I think is good. Yeah, I'm going to go with 32. Okay, so this is starting to look a bit more button-like. I'm thinking maybe sort of a pill shape for this button. So if you click on the button, under appearance, we have the corner radius. So you can push up and start to get a corner on here. So if I tap like 16, I'm just going to zoom in. You can see there's a little bit of a corner there to it. I'm actually going to go for a pill shape. Once this number gets higher than the height, which is currently 72, so if we type 72 in, it will look like it's fully rounded. And just to make sure that doesn't change, and it's always round, you can just put in a huge number like 999, press tab, and then that's going to give me a fully rounded pill shape button. Let's make this the kind of button that somebody really wants to click on, and that will allow me to show you some more Figma features too. So maybe let's apply this, instead of this solid fill, like some sort of gradient to it. I'm also not sure about this brown. Let's first of all click on it and then align it back to the center. I think really, I'm going to click on fill here. I'm going to click on the eyedropper. We need to maybe pick up this sort of goldy green type thing, but I want to start with a dark color. It doesn't look very green once you sample it. Is it just my eyes that think it's green? It looks more like gold or brown. I want something fairly dark. Don't worry about trying to copy this sampling exactly, because you can just, once I find the color, I will read it for you. Okay, we'll start with this one. So I'm going to change this to hex. And what we have here is a hex code of 353313. So you just need to type that in, okay, for your fill. Then once we have that as a solid fill, we're going to click on the second icon here, which is gradient. And what it will do is it will use our first sample color and it will take it to a second color here, which is just automatically created because it's like, hey, you want to use a gradient, let me just choose something for you. That's not bad, but let's sample another one from here. So I'm going to click on that icon. I'm going to click on the eyedropper. I'm just going to sample something, I think. So we do bring in a bit of this golden type color. That's pretty good. Okay, so now you can type in 8E6D2B. Fantastic. And we have here a gradient. Now I want to match up a little bit with this photograph. So I'm actually going to just drag this button, although it's going to appear on the light background. So maybe on this light background, but so I can have this image in frame, and I'm just going to zoom around them so I can really see what I'm doing. Maybe just out a tiny bit. But 100% is probably good for me on my screen. Okay, so I'm just looking at the light. We've got this shadow in this sort of bottom right-hand corner. So that's what I'm going to follow, that sort of direction as well with the lighting. It's kind of top lighting, a bit softer on the left, a bit more on the right there. So with my button selected, you can see now my fill is a linear gradient. I'm going to click on the swatch. So I have these options up again. And what you can do is if you click on this white circle next to the swatch on the canvas and hold the mouse button down, you can drag this around, and you can even go beyond the bounds of your frame. You can go wherever you want with it. I'm just going to have it sort of along the top here somewhere. So at the moment it's kind of above the E and it's along the top line. And then with this other one, maybe just see what I do for a moment and then you can follow along sort of momentarily. I'm going to bring this. So we want this angle. I'm now going to bring this one over. And I'm just going to play with this for a minute, and then you can follow along and copy me. So we'll speed this up, and then I will tell you how to follow along and copy momentarily. Okay, and this is a fairly typical design process where you experiment with things, but copy this. The first stop, the color is the same as what we originally read out, the darker color. The lighter color that we have is now 80692A. Okay, then to position these, and I'll just zoom right in so we can see. You can do this to the eye, but basically you can see the position here of my stops. So you can drag them around so they're basically there, but I'm cutting through the E here on the sound, and this one's, below the frame. Something around there is absolutely fine to start with. Fantastic. Right, so I want to reflect this shadow look that we had before. So the next thing that we are going to do is add a drop shadow. So I'm going to click on the button, and then on our right panel, we have effects. We can click on this plus icon, and you see it adds a drop shadow. I might not be able to really see this too well, so let's make this a little bit more obvious. So next to the words drop shadow on the left, we have an icon of effect settings. Click once on that. And if you look at these settings, firstly under color where it's black, I'm going to change this to 100 just so you can see it. And I'm going to change the X position to 4, just as the Y is 4 and the blur to 0. So now you can see this black, thick drop shadow. In fact, let's make this a bigger number, 1010. That has been created. You don't need to copy this bit. I'll let you follow along in a moment. And that is a drop shadow. And if we drag this Y, that's the vertical, X is horizontal. Okay, that's where you want to place it, negative, positive, whatever. Okay. So we can get this kind of in the place that we want it to be. Maybe it's like 4 and 4. I think actually we want it to go a little bit more vertical than horizontal. So I'm going to do 2 and 4. And then you can start to blur this out. Okay. How you want this to feel. And then you can bring down this opacity. I'm going to hold down Shift while pushing down. And kind of just give yourself this little bit of a shadow underneath. Okay, maybe this one's a little bit far actually. I just want this to be like the darker one. So I'm going to do that as 1 and 2. So copy these settings, 1, 2, 6, black 40%. Then what I'm going to do is add another drop shadow. Now I can click on this plus, or I can have this effect selected by clicking on the left of it. So it's blue row. Command C, Command V. Click on the effect settings. And for this one, I want to blur this one out more. So I'm going to push it so it's 2 and 4. So it's a bit further away. And then I'm going to just blur this quite a bit larger. So it's just like a softness underneath. So that's a 20%. You might think it's not doing much, but if we just hide that, show it, hide it, show it. Same with the bottom one. You can see that together they do create that sort of effect that I want. So it's creating that little shadow underneath. The next thing that I'm going to do is add a stroke to this. Now I like this linear gradient that I've created. I want to use this thing again. So what I can do, whilst I've got this selected, and you can see the fill here, the linear has appeared, we have next to the add fill another icon which says apply styles or variables with 4 circles. We're going to click on that, and then we're going to click plus new style or variable. So here, this style, we can actually give this a name like gradient. You might have lots of gradients. It might be more descriptive in a full website, but this will do us for now. Actually, let's call it gradient-btn button, so it's slightly descriptive. And then I'm going to click create style. And you can see now, instead of saying that it's a linear gradient, it's showing me that I'm using a style here that I have created. Fantastic. I'm going to add a stroke to this button by clicking on the plus next to on the stroke line, add stroke. And a stroke is a line and outline around, an outside, which you can have, or it is a line like on our icons. So these can be inside. If I just make this something huge, so we can see like 10, it can be inside your selection. It can be on the center line of it, or it can be outside of it. Okay, I'm going to select this to inside and make this a lot smaller than that, maybe 2 or 3. Let's go with 3. Let's look at that at 100%. I think 3 is going to be good. I'm going to go back to large so you can see what we're doing. Select it. Now I want to use my gradient for the stroke. So I'm going to click on the swatch. And then I'm going to go to libraries and then click gradient button. Now this doesn't look like anything now because it's following the exact same direction on my stroke. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to detach the style, breaking the link to it. So it's just applied that, but it's separate. And then I'm going to click on this swatch for linear stroke. And then I'm going to select the option to flip gradient. Click on that icon. It's flipped it around. So now you can see the look that I'm going for. This button is starting to look a bit more tactile, a bit more 3D, which is great. Okay, so with this light coming from the top left, that's the thing we need to work on now. We've got a little bit of a shadow at the bottom. I want to do some sort of glow at that level. So I'm going to select my button again. I've got these 2 drop shadows. I'm going to duplicate these by pressing Command D. And I'm going to drag this middle one up to the top so I notice these 2 top ones. I'm going to click on the effect settings icon. And I am going to change the color from black to white. Okay, you can see that white that's come around it. But I want this at the opposite top corner. So I'm just going to put a minus sign before my X and Y values. So check you've got these settings. -1, -2, 6, white. Currently 100% because I selected white. There's others were lighter, weren't there? So we're going to need to bring this down in tandem with the other ones, but I'll have it so it's just sort of showing there. 40%, that's good. Okay, same process with the next drop shadow. Click on effect settings. X -2, Y -4. I'm going to change the color. This was currently 20% to white. It's made it 100%. And let's go back down near that 20% and see if that's probably going to be about right for us. The only thing I would say is the white looks pretty harsh on this background. So maybe instead of a pure white, we could have a little bit of a lighter color. Maybe we base it on our lighter color from our gradient. So sorry, let me slow down. Click on button. Click on this stroke, the linear gradient. I'm going to double click to select the hex value here on the lighter stop. Command C to copy it. Close that down. Button selected. I'm going to click on my top drop shadow. I'm going to paste this color in here. But this is going to be too dark, so I'm going to click on the color. I'm going to change the brightness. So you see this is HSB, hue, saturation, brightness. Click in the brightness, hold down shift while pushing up, and you will see the circle, which is selecting our color there, is going to move upwards. So it's brighter and brighter. Okay, I'm going to bring that up to 100%. And I'm going to do the saturation, the next one, and I'm going to decrease that so it goes to the left. So what we have now is a sort of more of an off-white kind of color. If I change this to 100%, you can see it's this sort of yellowy off-white. Okay, so now I can do that to taste, and maybe it goes a bit brighter because we're using this yellowy color, 40%. I'm going to copy this hex code, and then I'm going to go to my next drop shadow along that was currently white, and I'm going to paste my hex code in there. Again, just have a look at this. But this is okay. Maybe it's a bit yellowy, not kind of towards the brown enough, but it demonstrates what we want to do. Okay, this is pretty good. I don't want to do too much more with this. I think one thing would be that maybe with this stroke weights of this icon are a little bit thick. So now I've got them all selected here. If you've not followed me there in the layers panel, it's actually at 3.39. So we could just actually make that 3. Is 2 too light? Yeah, let's change it to just 3. And I'm just making it match up more to the font that we have here. A couple more glows would be interesting. It'll allow me to show you some more effects as well. So I'm going to press O to give me my ellipse tool again. And then I'm just going to click and drag into this button and make some sort of ellipse. I mean, this one is 48 by 26, but we're going to mess with it anyway. Okay, now it's broken our auto layout, so we go over to position in the top right and click ignore auto layout. Okay, now we can drag this around wherever we want, and it's ignoring the auto layout. I'm going to change the fill color maybe to the hex code that I just did. Has it still got it remembered? It has. If it doesn't for you, you can do FFE6A1. Fantastic. And what I want to do is have this as a bit of a light, similar to where there's, whoops, I need to hold down spacebar. Somehow I selected first. There's a bit of light coming from the left here. There's a bit of light coming from the top. So I want to do that kind of thing. So I'm going to click on this ellipse again. I just held down command while clicking to deep select. Then I am going to go to effects. On my right panel, click add effects, and there's some more effects that we have here that we can use. I'm going to change this to layer blur, which actually blurs this image, this layer, the shape. Then I'm going to click on effect settings, and we want this to be pretty huge. I'm holding down shift. Yours might be going up in 10s, whatever, that's fine. Yes, somewhere in between here. 32 maybe. And then I'm just going to sort of angle this, drag it around, change the size of it, change what, you know, and just sort of play with it to make it feel like it's the right kind of glow that I want. That's pretty close. It's just a bit too bright. So I'm going to, with it, the ellipse selected, go to fill, and then the fill opacity is selected there. I'm going to press shift and down arrow just to sort of have a look at this coming in kind of subtly, so it's not totally breaking everything. That's pretty good. I'm going to make a copy of this. Hold down Option or Alt. Hold down your left mouse button. Drag across. We'll have another one kind of spotty in this sort of area. I'm going to make this one a bit bigger maybe. And maybe make this one a little bit less because it is really breaking our sort of look. Maybe it's a bit smaller. And you can maybe watch what I do for a minute and then kind of do your own version. I just want to add in one more effect to this. So I've got this whole button selected. Go to effects, click plus for add effect. And this, it's the top one that it creates. Click on the effect settings icon. So we've used drop shadow. We've used layer blur. As you can see again, we haven't used background blur, which blurs what's underneath it if you've got something that's opaque. But we're going to use inner shadow. And again, just to show you where this is, let's take this to 100%. Let's take the blur to 0. Let's push up on the X and Y. You can see this black that's developed. We can push the blur up actually, and maybe it looks a bit more realistic. So with this one, just see if we want this from the bottom right or the top right. I think for our normal state, we will make it from the bottom. So let's start with -4, -4. And when you're messing with these effects, it's good just to show and hide them to see how the whole thing looks. But that really helps this look more 3D. So I've ended up with -4, -4, blur of 12, and it's black 60%. Okay, fantastic. So let's go back to 100% and let's drag that button. Make sure we've got the whole button selected here, the button auto let frame. Let's drag this button down vaguely to where it wants to be. Cool. So let's tidy up our spacing and then we are going to prototype with this button. Just zooming out a little bit. I think at the top we maybe don't need quite so much space. So I'm going to select my top nav container and then just click on it and drag it down till I kind of like where it wants to be. And to make that a bit easier for you, let's make this exact. So we're going to click on this not smarter by command click, and I can show you another feature. Within this topography here, this box has been created, based on the point size and the line height, so we can change this to 100%. The box around it goes a bit smaller. We can actually click on settings here, type settings, and there's an option here of vertical trim. And at the moment, this is using the text box standard, but we can change this to cap height to baseline. You'll notice that the box around it goes smaller, so it's just around the actual characters itself. The baseline is the line the type sits on. So I'm going to do that and then drag that back to where we wanted it, just sort of slightly overlapping this bottom left corner of the A. And then here we can look at a gap. So I've dragged this so it's actually touching this not smarter. And then for the position, I'm maybe going to type -64. That looks better to me now. Now this has gone off to the side, so I'm going to change my X back to 0. I'm going to click on the desktop frame. I'm going to hover over the top edge, hold down command and my left mouse button while I click and drag until that just snaps onto my top frame, which it hasn't yet. That was something else. And I'm feeling that snap there. And if I click on this frame, yeah, that is aligned properly on the top. So that feels better at the top now. This one underneath, I'm just going to do this compositionally based on the image. Again, it would probably be helpful if we had this at 100% line height, but I actually just trimmed it instead. Vertical trim to baseline. And you've got to squint. It doesn't work if you don't squint. You can zoom out a little bit, see how it feels. You can go back to 100%. I'm doing it at 50 just so I can see the whole composition or whatever's good for your screen. That looks good to me. Then this text here. Now we changed this color, didn't we? I've just remembered this is from the brown. I want to pick up one of my greens or the dark color I used here. So I'm going to go into this stroke and I'm going to copy this color, which was our one beginning with 353. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go up to this text. I'm going to make that the fill. And then, so we remember this, whoops, we can make this a style as well. So we click on the apply styles of variables. We click plus, and we can just call this dark, or maybe call it green dark. create style. Fantastic. And this text box, I want to have a sensible sort of gap from what's above. Yeah, 179 that is. I want to use my 8 pixel spacing because I just have to make sure it's perfect. So I would suggest that this gap, click the first text box, shift click, so we select both of them. And then this gap in between, I can actually drag this now. So maybe you'll do 160, which does divide by 8. Fantastic. Then click on the button, click on it in the layers panel, make sure we select the whole thing. If I drag this up, it will prompt me now to do a 160. Let go. If I zoom out, that looks good. And maybe the gap at the bottom, again, hover over the bottom, command click. Again, that's telling us that's now 178. So what I could do if I wanted another 160, that's actually going to be way too much actually between the button and the text above. So I'm going to click on the button. I'm going to type -80. So that gap ends up being half. I'm going to go back to 100%. That's still too big. I'm going to go back to this button. I'm going to type in -24. And now I'm going to just do shift and push up the down, and just look at how these kind of belong together. That looks good to me. So what we've ended up with, and you'll be able to do it by looking at this, is a gap of 56. So I click on one of them, I hold down Option while I hover over the next item, and you can see that 56 in the red box. So we've got a gap of 56 in between those two. And then I think at the bottom, I want that sort of 160 that we had there. So I'm just going to drag this up actually first of all. And I've got a 1461. So I would want to add plus 160 onto that height. So I've ended up with 1621. Go back to 50%, look at the whole thing. That looks okay. Great. So 2 more things. Prototype this button, but let's do the mobile layout. So the button here, I'm going to select it on my canvas and I'm going to make a copy of this. So hold down Option whilst you click and drag. I'm going to hold Shift as well. I'm just going to bring this out onto the canvas area here. And we zoom in to this guy. And I'm going to rename this button/default. Then I'm going to click and drag whilst holding Shift below. Doesn't matter the gap. I'm going to rename this to button/hover. Click on this button/hover. This is going to be our hover state when we hover over with the mouse button. Then I'm going to click on this first one in the shadow, effect settings, and I want you to change this from -4 X and Y values to just 4. So just delete that minus. So it's 4 and 4. Everything else I'm going to leave the same, except actually this icon. It might be cool if this sort of expands. So let's go into button default. We'll click on this icon volume 2 and then the vector. We've got these 2 items here. I'm going to zoom right in and I want to select just this outer one here. Okay, so there's a few ways. I can double click and I can get into these pen tool options here that have come up and just click on one of these points here itself and then press backspace. It's going to just delete this whole thing. Now that's actually changed the width there of my entire button. So we want to make sure these are the same. So I'm going to go back to button. I'm going to make sure this icon volume 2 doesn't change. So in button hover, I'm just going to deep select by command click and check what icon volume 2 is here. This has got a width of 33.94. That seems, I'm going to break this link. I'm just going to push that up to 34. So that's more exact. And then just scrolling up with the button hover, what we're going to, the button default, what we're going to need to do here with this guy is actually create a frame. So with this group selected, I'm going to press Option Command G to create a frame. And I'm going to drag these vectors into the frame. And then the group has disappeared because there's nothing within it. And then we can just call this volume icon. It's always good to name your layers. And then I can do what we were going to do originally, which is hold down Command and the left mouse button whilst hovering over that right edge and drag this out till it is 34. Fantastic. And then I'm going to go Command 0. And now these buttons should be the same size. 354 hug, 354 hug. Beautiful. Okay. So we've got our 2 button states here. Now what we want to do is make these into a component. So on the canvas, click in some space and then drag around both of them so both are selected, or you can select both of them on the layers panel here. Then on the top right, where it says frame, follow that row along. We have these 4 diamonds. It says create component, but you actually want to click on the down arrow next to that. And we're going to click create component set. Now it's created a component, it's named it button, and if we expand it on the layers panel, you can see it's made the 2 states hover and default, and that's because the way we named our frames with the slash, it's used that naming convention automatically. Fantastic. Now what we need to do is prototype this so that when we hover over, it changes to the hover state. So we're going to click on default. And then we're going to go into prototype mode, which we use by on the top right, we go from design tab, we click on prototype. Then there's a few ways of doing this. You can hover over and you get these blue pluses in a white circle that's got a blue stroke around on each corner. Or you can click plus on interactions, but let's do it with a circle. You click on that, you hold your mouse button down and you drag out, and you see now we've got an arrow. Where's it going to take this interaction, basically, is what it's saying. So we just drag this to our hover button and it will snap to it, and it changes the color to purple. You can let go of your left mouse button, and then it brings up this interaction menu. What's the trigger going to be? For example, when you click the button, well, that's not what we want. So let's click on the down arrow. We want to do it while hovering over the button, and you can see the options that are available here for interactions. That's what triggers it, what starts interaction. While hovering. So while hovering, we want it to change to, which is correct. And you've got these other options like navigating to another page or scrolling to a section on the page. But we're going to go change to property 1. We want to change it from default to hover. Okay. And it's going to do this instantly. And you can change this, for example, smart animate, ease in and out. And it's just going to give you, it gives you a preview underneath of what the sort of animation looks like. Okay. So make sure your settings are all the same as mine there on the interaction. And then we can close this down. One thing I didn't like about my button, if I just select their main component there, clicking out the layers panel, and then go back to design mode, is this is called property 1, which is generic. So I'm going to change that name to state for that first property. So we have the default state and the hover state. Now to see that in action, we need to actually bring this component in here. Now you can, again, option and or alt and click and drag it in. You can also go to your assets panel here and you can click on create it in this file, and we have a button, and you can click on that and drag it in to your frame. And now we have the button. And this now is an instance of this main component. So if we update this main component, then it will update the instance, for example, by, hiding the volume. It's hidden it, you can see, on our main canvas as well. If we show that again, and that's a way of updating, we can change the colors or anything there. Fantastic. Let's just collapse all our other layers. So what we want to do now is we want our instance to be in place where this button was. So I'm going to copy these settings. So this was 535. I'm going to click and drag this one up, actually, we can just drag it so it's next to it, so we know that's going to be the same now. So that's fantastic. And then with this one, it is aligned to the center. So I'm just going to delete this guy, the original guy. I'm going to click on this instance and I'm going to align it to the horizontal center. Fantastic. Now, how do we see this hover? We're hovering over it, nothing is happening. That's because we need to preview this. So we can either do this in present mode or preview mode. I'm going to use present. You can use these buttons at the top. So there's a play button there to present, and then click on the down arrow, there's also the preview, which pops up like a window. Let's just click the play button for present. And it's going to open a new tab here with our prototype. And if we scroll down to the button and hover over, we get this effect of the button changing as if it's being pressed, and the extra line coming up on the sort of volume there. So it makes like a nice sort of interaction. So you can play with that on your own button on your screen. Fantastic. Final thing we want to do is a mobile version. I'm going to click and move this button out of the way. What size should we make a mobile frame? Well, if we click F, we get our frame options. If you remember, there was options for a phone. So it says here Android compact is 412, etc., etc. So we have all these different options. So maybe we want, like, not the newest phone. We want to make sure it works on a smaller size. So we click like iPhone 13 and 14. And we can see here that the width is 390 pixels. Let's just move this guy out of the way. And I'm actually going to make a copy of our desktop frame. So I'm going to click on this desktop frame. I'm going to hold down Option and Shift while I click and drag this out. And I'm going to rename this mobile. Fantastic. So what we want to do is change the width of this to be 390. So I am going to hover over the edge and start to drag, but I'm also going to hold down Option. So I drag from the center, and Command, so that I'm not scaling and moving these things around. And I'm going to drag this until it says 390. I have to zoom in a little bit so it lets me get that exact. 390. Fantastic. Command 0 back to 100%. Great. So we have our mobile. I'm just clicking and dragging this over so it's closer now. We have this mobile done. We can't read anything. Okay, so how are we going to fix this? Let's just go from the top. So first of all, in our mobile, and if we collapse the other layers, Option L, and expand the mobile one, we have our top nav container. Now this is set to 1440, so that is why we can't see that. So we can change that to 390, the same. Fantastic. Now we can't see anything. So this was constrained to the left and the top. We want this to be the center and the top. That would have helped us to begin with. And then I'm going to press Option H to bring it back in the center. Now on mobile, let's go back to 100%. We don't need all of these icons. We just need the menu. So what I'm going to do is just hide everything else. So I'm going to hide the search. I'm going to hide user. I'm going to hide map pin. I'm going to hide shopping bag. Fantastic. Then I'm going to bring the B&O logo to the top above left menu icons so that the menu goes on the right. And then we have got the problem here of the margins, and then we've got the problem of this space. So actually right menu icons, we want to hide the whole frame. Now these are being spaced out within the frame, but there's too much space on the left and right. Well, that's because if we turn the grids back on, Shift G, we still have our same layout grid, okay? So I'm going to click on layout grid settings, and I'm going to change here the margin to be 24, just the same as our gutter here. So that's that bit smaller. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go back into top nav container, and change our horizontal padding here to 24. I may as well just change the vertical one to 24 as well, just to bring that in. And then if we press Shift G, this looks more normal. Now you'd maybe say this logo is a little bit big, so we can click on the logo in the layers panel and press K to scale it, and maybe we just bring this down by half. And then we have kind of a mini logo. Maybe these strokes feel a little bit big now, but that's okay. Okay, so there's our top nav container. That looks correct. What's next? Well, we have some type that we can't see. So if we click on Not Smarter, And again, we maybe scale this to half. That's not enough. That was at 100. So maybe we can just look at these options here that we've got. Maybe this 64 is good. And that again wasn't aligned to the center. So I'll do that on my text box. And then again, with our position, we can bring that back to the center. Fantastic. So if that's 64 or just better, command click to select it, we can make half of 64, which we can type in this way if you don't want to do the math. Divided by 2 is 32. And we'll align that to deselect it, select it again, Option H, align it to the horizontal center. Fantastic. We probably want to actually see this speaker. So we will need to scale that. Maybe let's just finish the text off actually first of all. So I'm going to command select this part. I'm going to bring this down to say 16, which is one, it's in a standard browser. It's probably the smallest size you want. Now that does fit on one line. If it didn't, that's fine. Figma can handle text, over 2 lines, no problem. But I'm just going to undo that a couple of times and we'll leave that as it was. We need to mess with this spacing. For now, I think I'll select the portable speaker line and my button. I might just drag this button down actually, so these things just appear in order, so it's a bit easier to kind of consider them. And I'm going to select my button and my line above it, and I'm just going to drag them up a little bit so I just get more of a sense of these things being together. But we need to scale this image. So I'm going to select the image in the background and make sure you also select the image in the foreground at the same time. So command click on both of them because we want to scale them together. And press K, then my scale tool. And we can maybe start off with again, 50%. Yeah, I mean, now we can see that image. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to close that down. I'm going to align these to the top, but not by pressing that because that's going to mess with my mask group. It's just going to do the two of them together. I'm just going to click and drag them, holding down shift till I get my red line at the top. That's beautiful. I'm happy with that. So let's bring everything just into alignment. So they're not smart align. We're doing this to the eye. So we're just going to click and drag this up. We'll zoom right in and just use our up arrows. Put that where it was before. Fantastic. Just better. In fact, let's select all these and portable speaker and button. Click, holding down shift while dragging them all up. Let's put our just better about where we want it. Fantastic. Zooming in. So with this portable speaker, that's now giving me a gap of 84. I could maybe just change that to 80 if I do -4 on here. Yep. And then my button wants to be, 40 is great. Oh, look, I've got a 40, 80, 40. So if you want to check these, press button, hold down option whilst hovering, gap of 40 to that text. Click on this text, hold down option, a gap of 80 to this one. Then I'm going to click on the whole outer mobile frame, hold down command and the left mouse button whilst hovering over the bottom edge, click and drag this up till it's about where I want it to be. Let's just do this to the eye for now. And we now have a mobile design as well. And you can actually preview this. You can use shift and spacebar to open this little preview window so it feels like a phone. You can even, with mobile, go into prototype settings and then click show prototype settings and change the device to the one we mentioned, which was the same with the iPhone 14. Click on mobile, then option command enter, and you see this is how it looks actually within a phone type setup. We've covered a lot in this free course, but if you want to use Figma professionally, then definitely have a look at Figma for web designers. It's much more comprehensive and systematic as we dive into advanced features and give you time to really understand everything that Figma can do. Link in the description of this video to check that out. Well done if you got this far. Leave us a comment to let me know because this is the longest video I've ever made, I think. Until next time, happy designing.